Kamalagita, you're muted.
Sorry, I was saying that we're going to record it because inevitably there'll be people who can't make it. So we thought it'd be nice to have a record, but if for some reason that's problematic for you, you can turn your camera, you're welcome to turn your camera off. Okay, lovely. All right then, so let's just start with a brief arriving practice, settling practice. So lovely to see you all. I'll say a bit more in a minute. So yeah, just sit in as well as you can, wherever you find yourself. And perhaps just taking a few deep breaths. And on the out breath, really allowing the shoulders to drop. The hands to be supported on the legs or the knees or the side of the chair. And taking that moment to settle, to make a transition. From whatever you've been doing to this moment. So you can take a few more deep breaths if that's helpful. And on the out breath, just have a sense of decompressing, of just allowing everything to sink down and be supported by the chair. We don't need to hold on anymore. And perhaps just noticing sounds in the immediate environment. Sounds coming and going, traffic, radiator, whatever's there. Allowing yourself to be. And then wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes, having a little stretch perhaps. And externalizing your awareness once more. Okay. So it feels like we've arrived now, which is lovely. So welcome to this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kamalagita, if you don't know me, and I'm a mindfulness trainer but I've also been a classroom teacher. And so my area of speciality is mindfulness in education and mindfulness in schools and colleges. And the reason I've put on this event this evening is because I know that teachers, particularly at this time of year, can be very stressed and have very little time for their well-being. So the next hour or so is for you, it's for your own well-being. And I've taught mindfulness to hundreds of teachers now and have been really interested to see the benefits, how they take mindfulness into their daily life in a school or college. And I'm pleased to see some of those teachers and school staff here tonight. You've been an inspiration to me. So I wanted to just share some of the learnings really from that. And wanted to create a resource to help that will be accessible to you. So staff well-being, it's really, really important. All school staff are caregivers. So school staff are caring, looking after, nurturing others all the time. So what happens when, you know, you run out of juice, as it were? The tank can get pretty empty, can't it? So this is why teacher and school staff well-being is so important, because unless you keep yourself topped up, then you're not going to be able to serve the communities and the population that you love serving. But it's got another aspect to that as well. So the well-being I'm suggesting here is mindfulness, which is a way of being present, of being able to calm yourself and find peace in the moment, but also to just step back from experience as well and gain more perspective, and then make choices about what would be best next to do. And mindfulness has been shown to help school staff. In fact, one study showed that mindfulness helps school staff relate to students with increased empathy, create calmer and more focused learning environments as well. And just teachers felt a lot more purposeful. So if your own well-being is bottom of the list and you sort of think, oh, well, I'll get to that at some point in the summer holidays or something, then it's not only important to look after yourself for your own sake so that you can give to others, but it has an effect in the classroom as well. So that's what I want to focus on tonight. One of the studies of mindfulness has shown that teachers can really create the weather in the classroom. And I'm going to share my screen with you now. Okay. And this is the topic of this evening. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of something at the corner. Okay. So teachers, school staff create the weather in the classroom. So that's quite an interesting phrase to start with, isn't it? And perhaps you would just like to unmute or put in the chat, what do you feel or think creating in the weather in the classroom means? What does it mean to you? A little look up here. Setting the tone, the quality in the learning environment, atmosphere. Yeah, great. Just need to get rid of this now. Ooh, there's a lot coming up here. Can people see the chat box in the middle? Yeah, okay. So this is where you can have empathy for me. There we are. Okay, so let's go back. I'm just going to stop that for a minute because there are all sorts of weird things happening. Okay, so here's a lovely image that, can you see all that? You all see that? Start again, there we are. Okay, so here's a lovely image that Stella, who's here, created. So Stella's a full-time teacher and somebody who's really taken on mindfulness and is practicing it in her daily life, but she's also a very talented artist. So I was really, really pleased that she was able to illustrate my book. So yeah, here's a lovely image of this creating the weather in the classroom. So as you can see, it might be sunny outside. There might be an expectation of it being sunny outside, but it's raining in my heart. So there's the teacher at the front, and whatever's going on, you know, they've got an umbrella over them. So maybe they're managing to keep their mood at bay, but it's definitely there in the background. And then of course you can see the students, and they've got all their umbrellas up as well, and different sort of weather's going on for them. So there's this implication really that unless we take some time to check in with ourselves, to be able to just note our thoughts and feelings and give those a little bit of space, then we can be going into a situation and unwittingly really creating the weather in the classroom, creating a storm or creating a sort of frantic environment. And of course, that's not the only weather that's going to be going on. The students, our colleagues will have their own weathers going on. So if we're not careful, we're going to have this sense of something being whipped up in the classroom. So it can make a big difference. So often what teachers say is, I don't have any time. I don't have any time. But actually just spending a few minutes at the start of the day, in the middle of the day, at the end of the day, to check in with yourself in this kind of way can make the difference between a calm breeze or whipping up a storm in the classroom. And this is a quote from the book. So in the book, I spoke to many school staff who practice mindfulness and heard about how mindfulness had really helped them in their school lives. And one of the members of the staff said something that was really striking. She said, I knew I had the ability to be a really good teacher, but something was stopping me. I couldn't work out what it was. I realized I was highly tense in the lessons and reacting quickly in the moment, and the negative self-talk was taking over. I wasn't listening to answers. Okay, so having that weather of tension in the body and mind can stop that agility in the classroom, can stop how responsive we can be to students, and the negative self-talk, taking things personally that happen, mean that kind of flow of energy, which is so critical really in good teaching, isn't there. And another really lovely quote came from a primary school teacher. And she said, well, I was always quick to react. If there was a problem, I wanted to sort it out so the children could get on with their work. Anyone recognize this? So, you know, something happens, you want to sort it out, you want them to get down to task again. But now I realize it's more important to wait and see the whole thing. Pausing is something that's been really effective, and a lot of research shows that what children need is calmness. I thought I was calm before, but I wasn't. So that ability to take a step back and just see what's happening. In fact, another participant spoke about, you know, when there's a little bit of, not misbehavior, but there's a little bit of, you know, just fuss or something going on in the classroom, that he just sits back and waits now, and then it just sort of settles. So it is a bit like this cloud, it just moves through. So we don't have to get in there and sort the cloud out. If we just wait a few minutes, the cloud will just pass through. So having this awareness of what we're thinking and feeling and what we're bringing to the situation is really, really important. Having some sense of your internal weather and giving it some space to settle can have effect on the students and the staff around you. So let's go ahead and do a practice now called the emotional barometer. It's a short practice. So all the practices we're going to do, mindfulness practices to do tonight, are very short, and they're just meant to be accessible, something that you can do in the moment. You don't need special circumstances to do them. You don't need to go off to a meditation room or anything like that. You can just do them in some sort of situation, and they will benefit you. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, just sitting comfortably. And sometimes awareness is likened to a torchlight. So we're going to shine the torchlight of awareness on the upper body now. So say from the pubic bone up to the crown of the head. So this is our barometer. And starting to notice any sensations in this area. So there might be tightness or fizzing, or openness or holding. Being really curious and seeing what's there. And just notice if it changes. So perhaps there was some fizzing or tingling or tightness somewhere. Is it there now? Or has it moved? And wherever you can notice that tightness or that tension, taking your awareness there and breathing intentional breaths into that area. So there's a sense of breathing in and soothing with the breath. And noticing if it changes. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but just noticing if there's a change just in these few minutes. And then we're going to widen that beam of torchlight just to take in the whole body sitting here. Breathe in. And when you're ready, just externalizing your awareness once more. Okay. So just stop the share for a moment there. So just wondering how it was with that practice then. What did you notice with that practice? So feel free to unmute or put in the chat what you noticed. So noticing tension in the forehead. Realizing I haven't stopped all day, and that's common, isn't it? It's a really common experience. Noticing how you feel, giving yourself time. My mind kept getting pulled away by thoughts, so that's really interesting as well, isn't it? That kind of, that weather pulling us out. Checking in is grounding. Easing of some tension. And felt a weight in your stomach, tension. More space. Tension in the back. Once I focused on my spine, I realized tension in my shoulders, and it felt good to let this go. So again, you know, we might not even be aware that we're holding this kind of tension unless we give ourselves the opportunity. So thanks for all that. And that, you know, all that is common experience, isn't it? Somebody had the same, but in their neck. Yeah, and trying to push work thoughts out of the way. Again, very common. So, and it helped me as well with all that tech stuff at the beginning. I'm using Keynote, which I'm not used to. So I had a bit of a wobble when I was doing the PowerPoint. So yeah. Yeah, so that's really good to hear. So it doesn't need to take long, but just by becoming aware, then we can make choices really about what goes next, and also about our interactions. Maybe if we know that we're a bit tense or something, we can take a bit more care with our interactions instead of just firing through and then realizing, oh, I've upset this person or that person, or that conversation went a bit wrong, and having to go and find that person and kind of make it right. So thank you for that. That's great. So obviously your well-being matters, and it's really, really important that you look after yourself to be able to do the demanding job that you do. But also why people teach is because they care about the potential of others, and they really want to nurture and foster that. And as I said, you know, the students are going to have their own things going on, aren't they, as well, you know. So by being more, I won't say in control, because that's the wrong word, but sort of having a sense of how we are, there's a sort of sense of mastery of our experience. We're aware, we can keep the initiative. By having that, then we are regulating. We're regulating our emotions. We're regulating our nervous system. We're regulating our bodies. And we are very, very social animals. You know, we pick up cues from each other. So in that way, if you are regulating, then just by being in your present, that, you know, it's giving that message to particularly the pupils to start regulating as well, and to kind of tune into that. I mean, I just want to throw it open for a minute. Just curious to know the other experience in the room, because there's quite a lot of people here who are mindfulness practitioners working in schools. I mean, is that your experience? Is that what you find? It'd be lovely to hear your voices as well. So if you'd just like to share something, you could unmute. That would be great.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I think, you know, I work in early years, and what you just said really resonated with me, because I think the children, it's like, it's literal in how they view you, but it's also very subtle. You know, that kind of, like you say, you're creating this weather in the room. And, you know, of course, everyone brings their own energy to the room, don't they? And all the things that have been going on. But they do really look to you as the person in charge and the person that makes them feel safe and secure. So I think they look at you in a literal way, but also it's more nuanced as well.
And so those subtle cues that we're giving each other all the time, the social emotional cues, again, if we have more sense of what's happening for us, then we can take more care with those interactions, can't we? Yeah. Thank you, Liz. That's really
it's a lot of communication is like non-verbal as well, isn't it? You know, so it's even like the way you are holding your body. Like then I was realizing that I had this tension that I've been probably building it up all day, you know. But it's like, if you can have that moment of awareness in the classroom and then let it go, the children will pick up on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I'm not surprised you've got tension being an early years teacher at this time. Everyone's probably been bouncing off the ceiling. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Anyone else want to share something? Jay?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think particularly at this time of year, it's really noticeable. I don't know if other people's settings are being affected by COVID and, you know, the end of term kind of feeling. I think everyone's really tired. And I'm noticing the effect that staff are having on each other. And, you know, staff are having on students, and things are escalating more than they would perhaps if it was June and we were all relaxed and we were feeling like we were heading to the summer. I've had to deal with a number of situations where staff have wound each other up the wrong way, and I've been talking to them about taking a little bit of a space to just think about things. Our year 11s are doing exams at the moment. They've got their mocks on, and yeah, everybody's a bit on eggshells, and that's having an impact on escalation.
Absolutely. So there's a real awareness of the situation there as well, isn't there? Like there's big exams going on, that's affecting people, and then seeing these little contretemps that might happen. But you know, because of your background of practicing as well, you can just take that step back and encourage other people too as well. So thanks for sharing that. So that's in a secondary situation as well. Any other music?
Sorry.
Dawn? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just to sort of add to what Jane has said, and Elizabeth in her context as well. I work in a primary school context, and I'm a head teacher allegedly, but I think it's just trying to be attuned to how a variety of people are feeling and being mindful of you, as Jane just said. It's just being mindful of how you present, you know, physically, with your body language, even if it's just a briefing session, but moving through a variety of contexts, interactions. It could be with staff, it could be with pupils, it could be with parents, it could be, I don't know, a visitor, and it can be a variety of situations which, you know, you have to be switched on to try and help the situation or serve somebody in the right way. But I think when you come back, when you mention about pausing, and trying to take that breath. And even if it's going, right, I'll be with you in 5 minutes, I'm going to grab a cup of tea, and then you start taking those breaths if you know a difficult conversation is coming up. So I think it's being mindful of how you present. And it's quite tough as well, you know, depending on your role, whether in early years, you know, in a class, but it's been attuned to so many different people's needs at one given time. So I think that's how I try to consider how I might present to somebody to try and affect their weather then, so to speak. So I'm really mindful about that. And I think it does help that when you do take that pause and you are, because I'm always thinking about how I say something, how it might look. Not always, sorry, that's exaggeration, but I try to think about it. So I think in having that sense of how you might look, even though you might not be feeling the right on top of the world, is really important, you know, having just doing a quick barometer of how you are, taking a few deep breaths, whatever, it just helps, you know. Yeah, it just helps things.
Thanks, Sean. And of course, you know, that you have really highlighted as well the sort of the multidisciplinary communication you have as a member of staff, you know, that you're interacting with the children, you're interacting with staff, you're interacting with parents. For you as a head, you're interacting with governors, you're interacting with the local authority, etc., etc. So there's all these different levels of communication that you have to try and come fresh to, and that can be really challenging, particularly when one is tired. So taking this time for ourselves to, it doesn't have to be long, can just really help to reset in a way. Natalie, be lovely to hear from you. You're unmuted. You need to unmute, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting hearing what people say. One of the things that I find it useful for as well is to give them a sort of break from where they've just been to where they're arriving to, by putting in that pause and allowing them to gather themselves and bring themselves to the new lesson or wherever they are. So it's quite common if they're coming to something with me that I'll just, as they're arriving, we just take a mindful moment. I might have a breathing GIF up on the screen, but we just settle ourselves down because they don't get a lot of time to shift into those new demands. So giving them that at the beginning and a moment for themselves can be really powerful. But it's that shared thing, because sometimes in the classroom, teaching is a performance, but you need some authenticity in there. So whilst you're trying to drive what you want to achieve in one way, they need to feel you're genuine. Because if you're asking them to be mindful and you're sharing that with them, they've got to trust you, and they've got to feel connected to what it is you want to achieve with them. So in our school, we've worked really hard on the language that we use with children. So you can pretty much be anywhere in our school, and if you use some of the language around mindfulness, mindful moments, or some of the techniques they've learned, the .Bs and so forth, and you can quickly click into using that vocabulary, click into that connection, and be able to say, look, do you know what? It's all a bit busy right now. Should we just take a moment? Let's be mindful. And they're there with you straight away, because it's become part of something they experience with you in the classroom and other teachers in the classroom. It's not just one person crusading. You've got it embedded and shared across the teacher network in the school. And so that helps to spread that whole approach and gives them sort of sense of safety. It's not, I go to one lesson and that's the only time I ever get that understanding, but actually I can go to different parts of my school and know that it's valued and that the teacher is being mindful and checking in, and so I'm doing the same, and that's helping us all to flourish better, not just as learners but as people.
That's lovely to hear. And what I enjoyed hearing then was about the shared experience. So you were talking more about helping the students make transitions, but in doing that you're helping the staff to make transitions. And I loved it when you said about that authenticity as well. So in Stella's picture, there's a kind of there's a sort of stage behind, isn't there, Stella, that you put, because there is that, you know, that element of performance, but something about the authenticity, as you say, that can be really reassuring as well. And you know, I know you've worked really hard in your school, Natalie, to make it a mindful culture, and yeah, it's very inspiring, which really leads beautifully really into the next slide. So if I can just share the screen again. It was lovely to hear from you. So here's another primary school teacher who talked about mindfulness, saying, well, it's like a teaching method, slowing down the pace, the voice, everything that you're doing, being aware of the effect it has on the children, and noticing the effect of perhaps when you don't do this. So you know, we can't always find the time, but it's quite interesting to notice, well, what's the cost then when we don't take that breath, when we don't take those moments for ourselves? What's the cost in communication? And why it was so interesting what Natalie was saying, and why it leads on very nicely, is there's been much talk about teaching mindfulness to children, but there's starting to be more talk now about being taught, the effect of being taught by a mindful teacher. So even if you're not directly teaching children mindfulness practices, it's about the effect of being taught by a mindful teacher, or teacher who practices mindfulness. And one of the reasons that this has really come into the interview recently is the Myriad study and the Myriad report. So Myriad has been a huge randomly controlled trial looking at mindfulness in school, mainly on students, but staff as well. It took about 8 years. It was about 85 schools involved. So really big piece of research by Oxford University and co. And one of the things that they really found, one of the interesting things they found, was the effect of mindfulness on teachers for their own well-being, and how that then had a really positive effect on the school culture as a whole. So William Kaiken, he was one of the principal investigators, says maybe we need to be rethinking the focus of our interventions, not directly working with teens and teaching them mindfulness, but rather creating climates and contexts in which they feel safe, respected, and able to learn. And Mark Greenberg, who's been involved as well, who works in Penn State University, so, you know, this is kind of an international view, says one area in education, mindfulness has repeatedly been successful, and this shows in the Myriad research, is helping schools become places where children can explore their inner worlds with adults. Okay, so this is all quite interesting, really, because we start with teacher well-being or school staff well-being, which is really important in its own right. And then it's showing how mindfulness then can help teachers be more purposeful in the classroom, be more focused, have increased empathy for the students. But then we're coming on to a major piece of research, which is saying that school staff learning mindfulness and practicing mindfulness and just being a mindful teacher without passing it on to students can really help create an atmosphere where students feel safe, they feel respected, and they feel ready to learn. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the share there. And again, I'd just be interested to hear from you. Any thoughts on this? You can put them in the chat if you like.
All right.
I was going to say, like, I thought it was amazing what Natalie was saying, that what they've achieved in their school in relation to embedding mindfulness, with practitioners and pupils. We haven't got that far yet, but it's something that we've been trying to do, sort of starting off during COVID and the lockdowns, and we went to sort of online learning, and obviously Joe, we work with you as a staff to help staff well-being and their self-coping skills, but it's something, to sort of promote attitudes to learning, or just to relax them and make them feel aware of their feelings and being present, etc. Is something we've in a couple of our classes, certainly a top class, because I was an EDS class. We timetable it in. So I know it sounds a bit, I don't know, bit naff, but it was an important part of the day to sort of settle the children and make them aware, and just to remind them they can take those mindful minutes. They can do the breathing exercise around their fingers, etc. So it was just helping them with being in tune with their feelings, but also with transitions, even just leaving the class to go to another classroom out onto the yard. So it is something that's become an important part of the classroom practice, and we've taken that a little bit further forward now with yoga practice as well. And what we've found now is like some of the children, when I'm speaking with parents and carers, is that they're using these mindfulness techniques and yoga practices at home as well. So it's about equipping them to deal with things in the now and in the future. But it's amazing what Natalie's and her team have done in their school, and I think that's something we aspire to do perhaps within our cluster, in supporting the children with those sort of sustainable self-coping skills through mindfulness, starting in January, and then helping them when they transfer to the secondary, but through the secondary period as well. It's going to be a big part of our transition plan. So, but there's a lot of work to do, and there's quite a lot of convincing as well, I think, for adults. And you got to respect people's views. They might buy into it, they might not, but I think it's a more sustainable and cost-effective way of helping children, staff, parents and carers, because the plan is to work with parents and carers, governors, to make that available to everybody, because there's no services really available to support. We can't fix everything, so we just want them to be able to develop their own coping strategies. So I think something like this is really important, for practitioners and pupils, and that's what just a little glimpse of what we've been trying to do. But it's a bit hit and miss, because other things happen. So
well, we've had a big other thing happen in the last couple of years, haven't we? That's really tested everyone, really. So, but I from what I've read and from what I've observed in the mindfulness and education communities, like slow and steady wins the race. And I know with Natalie, they've started off and they've built it up over the years. I mean, it's been about a 6 or 7 year journey now, is it, Natalie? Something like that?
Yeah, we started in 2014 with what we called Mindful Mountain. And it was about not doing it piecemeal and for show. It was about how are we going to do this so that from the foundations up, it is going to be secure and it's going to have meaning. We didn't want something glossy that just looked like we were doing the right things. I mean, the way that it evolves, it is quite powerful. I mean, for example, just this week, so every week I always do a mindfulness session with our kitchen staff. So they come out of the hot, busy kitchens and they come into a different room, and we just do 15, 20 minutes of mindfulness, and then back they go. They absolutely love that. The other day, I was chairing for the leadership team meeting, and we all arrived stressed and frustrated from different places. So I just said, okay, before we start, let's just take a mindful moment. Now, I know there are people on the leadership team who don't have time to do mindfulness, but it was part of me and how I am and the culture of the teachers in our school who are like that, to say, okay, let's just do this. And you're talking a couple of minutes, but it's so powerful in that time, and the mood in the room and the pace at which we worked afterwards was so much more balanced. So, you know, you are in a school where in schools you've got that culture, I just don't have time. But actually, it takes so little time to have a meaningful difference.
Absolutely. And I do remember one member of staff who trained with me, and she said, I was surprised how I could calm myself in a very frantic environment, and it was just so simple to do. Yeah. So it's so simple, you think it wouldn't have an effect, but it actually does. So thanks for sharing that. We've also got in the chat, we all know how our moods affect each other, so it makes perfect sense being mindful of ourselves will have a positive impact, but I don't think it's something all schools really recognise. Staff and pupil well-being are monitored as two separate things, but they aren't. Very, very true. And Stella saying it's transformed the way I regulate my own emotions, definitely see the effect on the class when I'm not doing this. Big part of the health and well-being of learning experience. So in Wales, we've got this new curriculum, so we do have some license to put this in the curriculum, which is wonderful. And if we can't learn how to model this behaviour, the children won't. And Jane's saying it's really inspiring. So I feel like we could go on all evening, actually. It's just, I feel like we've just opened up this present, and all these jewels are spilling out. And so if if you want to carry on with the kind of conversation, you've got my email, and we can maybe work out how to do that. But it's been really valuable hearing from you all. So I'll just go back to the final part of the presentation now, which is the sort of how do we do it? So one of the member of staff I interviewed said, well, for years, my husband had been buying me these books and saying that I needed to do this, but it wasn't the right time. And I realized that I could do this, and was amazed how quickly it seemed to make a difference. So we're coming on to the resource I've created, the Mindful Teacher's Handbook. As we've discussed tonight, the perception is I haven't got a lot of time. So I wanted to create something that was really quick and easy, accessible, that people could dive into and find something and, read some context, but then also do some practices which would have an immediate effect. And I interviewed staff about what they'd found really helpful, and there's quite a few of them on this call tonight. And from that, the themes emerge. So there's creating the weather in the classroom, that's a theme, but there's also a theme on, as you've all acknowledged tonight, transitions, making transitions in the school day. School days are made up with a series of transitions, and as we've heard, it is for the pupils as well. So how do we manage those transitions better, so we're not carrying what's gone before, or we're not anticipating what's coming, but we can be present to the situation as it is. Another area is about behaviour management. How can we respond and be present rather than react? Just have that kind of knee-jerk, unaware reaction. There's chapters on difficult conversations with parents, with members of staff. But also, I think sometimes mindfulness has this perception of kind of being a problem solver. It's for like when we're stressed, we need to do some mindfulness. But actually, we're working with our minds, which is an amazing resource. our imaginations, our creativity. So again, by being present, we can open up and access those areas of the brain where we can, you know, really enjoy teaching and get great ideas about how to teach and how to engage the students and things like that. So there's chapters on creativity and thriving. So I'll just read you a couple of testimonials that people have been kind enough to give me. So Catherine Weir, who is like the grand dame really of mindfulness in schools, she's the sort of leading expert. She says it's an easy to follow handbook, and that's something I forgot to say. It's very much like a handbook. Here it is. So there's lots of space in it and areas to make notes and things like that. Easy to follow handbook, and written by somebody who understands mindfulness and the pressures of the classroom and staff room. Oh, I missed somebody there. So there's Jane, who's here tonight, who's talking about it's a combination of evidence and personal testimony for teachers and school leaders and practical exercises. A powerful educator's handbook for troubled times. So thanks very much for that, Jane. There's Jennifer Ford, who's head of my old school, Treorchy Comprehensive, and she says there's a toughness about this writing and an insistence to an absolute need to build in mindfulness that I found compelling and real. I see a need for this handbook in my school and at every school. And finally, from Natalie, saying if you're a teacher wading through a long list of read education books and initiatives, then put this book on the top of your pile and start here, which is really, really kind comment. So hopefully you'll be encouraged to read the book and to put some of these exercises into practice. And as a final sweetener for coming tonight, you can get 30% off the book if you go to Crown House to the checkout, and the code is mindful30. So maybe you could put that in the chat as well, Vishapani, mindful30. And there's a QR code as well. We are recording this, so they can send. We can send this to you too if you don't want to make a note now. Obviously, great Christmas present. Great for other teachers, colleagues that you know as well. So I'll stop the share there. And I'm very mindful of your time. So I want to finish on time because I know that you've had a long day probably. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear if there's anything else that anyone wants to share or any comments about this evening. I've really enjoyed just interacting with you all and hearing about what you're doing and the effect it can have. Yeah, and just if you want to unmute and say something, that would be lovely. Or if you want to put something in the chat, that would be lovely. Or any questions as well. I've got a few minutes if there's any questions. Oh, great. Jane's saying she's more relaxed now. That's...
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much to people who spoke up from their schools. You know, I'm focusing on mindfulness for myself, and we've got bits and pieces going on in our school, but we certainly haven't got this as part of a kind of an action plan or a coherent strategy for how we're going to implement it. And you know, I think we've got it sort of as a module in year 11 that's delivered through PE lessons when students are stressed and they really need it. Or we've got counsellors working in school who'll be working on these techniques with young people. But that's kind of a bit like the sticking plaster stage. So it'd be really good to start something that's more coherent. And just listening in tonight is making me think, oh, maybe I should just start with a small staff group and get some people who are like-minded, you know, working through some of the exercises in this book and then thinking about what we'd like to do from there. Maybe start small, but start something different.
Sounds great, Jane. And And you've all got my emails, so through the Eventbrite. So if you want me to put you in touch, you know, I can contact the other party and make sure that's okay. But yeah, you know, be great if some networking came out of tonight as well. So yeah, do feel free to contact me, or we can have another kind of webinar to share more ideas. That would be great as well. So lots of lovely comments coming here. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to have you. And yeah, good luck with the last few weeks of term. And yeah, hope our paths cross another time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kamalagita. Take care now. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
See you,
Bish.
Sean.
Well done. Thank you.